My name is Natalie Moore. I am 34 years old, an archival preservation specialist in Louisville, Kentucky, and at 8:15 on a Saturday night, I watched my stepmother lift the veil from my dead mother's wedding dress in front of 200 charity donors and tell them I had abandoned it because I was the kind of daughter who ran from family. The ballroom at the Seelbach was all gold light, white tablecloths, champagne glasses, and women clapping with their wrists bent like the whole room had been trained to applaud money. The dress stood on a mannequin under auction lights, ivory satin yellowed softly at the hem, pearl buttons running down the back, lace sleeves my mother had once let me touch with one careful finger when I was 8. Vanessa Moore stood at the podium beside it, smiling like she had not spent 18 years stealing the woman who wore it from my life piece by piece. My stepsister Lauren sat at the front table with a bitter paddle in her hand, the perfect charity princess, the daughter who stayed, the one Vanessa introduced in the program as her heart. My father, Peter, sat beside her with his jaw tight and his eyes on the centerpiece. He saw me near the side aisle. He looked away. Then Vanessa said into the microphone, "A runaway daughter does not deserve to keep memories she threw away." Lauren laughed, small and sharp, just loud enough for the closest tables to hear. My father mouthed, "Not tonight." That had been his job my whole life, not protecting me, scheduling my silence. I did not walk out. I moved closer to the dress, close enough to see the old cream dry cleaning storage tag still pinned inside the garment bag behind the mannequin. The tag had my mother's handwriting on it, "Keep for Natalie." Under that was a claim number I had seen once before on an insurance affidavit filed when I was 16 and sleeping in a shelter with a trash bag of clothes. My hands went cold, but my voice did not. Before I tell you what happened when I read that claim number into the Gala microphone and the room realized the stolen dress was only the first lie, tell me this. What time is it where you are right now, and where are you watching from? I want to know how far this story travels before my stepmother understands that a memory is not abandoned because someone stole the room around it. My mother's name was Elise Moore, and she died when I was 14. Before I understood that grief could be used like a doorway by people waiting outside. She had been a seamstress, not famous, not rich, but gifted with her hands in a way that made damaged things look forgiven. The wedding dress was the most beautiful thing she owned. She kept it in a breathable cotton bag at the back of her closet, wrapped in tissue, with a lavender sachet tucked near the bodice. Once, during a thunderstorm, she took it out and let me sit on her bed while she checked the seams. "If you ever want a piece of me in the room," she said, "this will be yours." I was 8, holding a flashlight because the power had flickered, and I believed promises stayed where mothers placed them. I did not know a promise could be folded, stored, hidden, insured, and auctioned under another woman's name. Vanessa entered our house 7 months after the funeral with a casserole, a perfume cloud, and a daughter who already knew how to look wounded when adults were watching. Lauren was 2 years younger than me, blonde, polished, trained in sweetness. She called my father Mr. Moore for exactly 3 weeks, then Dad by Easter. Vanessa called that healing. I called it replacement. My father did not correct her. He was too relieved someone had arrived to manage the grief he did not want to sit inside. Vanessa moved slowly at first. A photo frame disappeared from the hallway because it made the house feel stuck. My mother's sewing machine went to the basement because it gathered dust. Her recipe box was moved to a high cabinet because Vanessa said kitchens needed order. Then Lauren needed more closet space, so my mother's dresses went into black garbage bags. By the time I objected, I had already learned the family rule. Vanessa could erase. I could only overreact. Lauren became the proof that Vanessa had rescued us. She joined student council, wore pastel dresses to church, wrote thank you cards, and cried when anyone mentioned how hard it must be to blend families. I was the difficult one. When Lauren chipped my mother's blue mug, Vanessa said accidents happened. When I cried, my father said it was just a cup. When Lauren took my mother's pearl earrings for a school dance, Vanessa said Elise would have wanted another young woman to enjoy them. When I asked why nobody asked me, Lauren whispered, "You do not own dead people." At 15, I found my mother's handwritten quilt patterns in the recycling bin. Vanessa said paper attracted silverfish. At 16, Lauren moved into my bedroom because it had better light for her vanity mirror, and my things were stacked in the upstairs hallway in plastic tubs. My father said, "Try to make this easy." Easy meant gone. The night they finally pushed me out was not dramatic enough for the story they later told. No screaming police scene, no teenage rampage. It was a wet Thursday in March. I came home from school and found 3 trash bags on the porch, one with my winter coat sleeve caught in the knot. Vanessa stood in the doorway with her arms crossed and said she would not allow hostile energy under her roof anymore. Lauren was behind her wearing my mother's cardigan. My father stood in the kitchen, visible over Vanessa's shoulder, holding a dish towel he kept folding and unfolding. I said, "Dad?" He said, "Maybe tonight you should stay somewhere else." That was the sentence that made me homeless. Not the stepmother's cruelty, my father's permission. I was 16 years old. I had $72 from babysitting, a school backpack, 3 trash bags, and a mother whose dress was still somewhere in that house. I went to Mrs. Helen Carter's porch 2 blocks away because she had been my elementary school secretary and still waved when I passed. She opened the door, saw the bags, and did not ask me to explain before letting me in. Some adults recognize harm before a child has the language for it. Mrs. Carter called the school counselor the next morning. There were intake notes, dates, signatures, shelter forms, the practical paperwork of a life being quietly removed from a home. Vanessa told everyone I ran away because I hated rules. Lauren told people I wanted attention. My father told relatives I needed space. That phrase followed me for years. Space. They took my room, my mother's belongings, my place at the table, my name in the Christmas cards, and then called the absence mine. I finished high school from a shelter program and Mrs. Carter's guest room. I kept my grades high because teachers trusted good students faster than sad ones. I learned to keep receipts, scan forms, label boxes, and never let anyone else become the only holder of my history. Documentation became oxygen. I became an archival preservation specialist because I understood what happened when records disappeared. I restored water-damaged letters, old baptism certificates, family photographs with torn corners, quilts with smoke damage, military papers, textile samples, immigration documents, recipe books written in fading ink. People brought me pieces of their lives in paper bags and cried when I saved them. They said I had patience. The truth was simpler. I knew what it felt like when someone decided your memories were clutter. I knew the violence of a missing photograph. I knew that destroying proof could be a family tradition if nobody stopped it. My work was quiet, precise, and stubborn. So was I. For years, I did not challenge Vanessa publicly because I thought silence protected my mother's memory. That was the lie I told myself when I was tired. My father called when he needed help sorting old insurance letters. I sent him money twice when he said medical bills had piled up after a minor heart procedure. I restored a box of more family photographs for free when Vanessa wanted a display for the church anniversary. She gave Lauren credit for organizing the heritage table. I did not correct her. When my mother's name disappeared from family stories and Vanessa became the woman who held us together, I swallowed it. Every swallowed truth becomes someone else's platform. At 28, when Vanessa needed archival advice for a donor scrapbook, she mailed me a box of cracked photos with no return postage and wrote, "Use your little hobby." At 30, When my father's medical portal locked him out, he called me before he called his wife. At 32, Lauren used one of my restored images of my mother in a boutique mood board without asking and cropped me out of the corner. When I objected, Vanessa said, "You should be grateful Elise is inspiring people." Inspiration meant they could use her. Grateful meant I should stay erased. The dress disappeared from my questions first, then from the house, then from everyone's memory except mine. When I was 23, I asked my father where it was. He said there had been water damage years earlier, that several old things were ruined in a basement flood, that Vanessa had handled the claim because I was not around. Not around. I was in the shelter when the supposed flood happened. I asked for the insurance paperwork. He said, "Why are you digging?" That question told me to keep digging. Months later, Mrs. Carter gave me a sealed envelope she had saved from the school office after my counselor retired. It contained copies of my shelter intake record, a note from the counselor, and one strange photocopied insurance page that had been faxed to the school by mistake when Vanessa tried to prove I was an unstable runaway with a history of property disputes. The page listed household textile loss: 1 ivory wedding gown, 1 cedar chest of heirlooms, 3 framed photographs, assorted linens. Claim number F1472, signed Natalie Moore. The signature looked like mine if someone had only seen it on a permission slip. I kept that paper for 11 years. I did not know the dress had survived. I only knew someone had used my name to bury it. The gala invitation arrived through Mrs. Carter. She called me on a Tuesday evening and said, "Natalie, there is something ugly in the charity program." Her voice had the same careful tone she used when she found me on her porch at 16. The Moore Women's Legacy Fund was hosting its annual auction, chaired by Vanessa, co-chaired by Lauren. The centerpiece item was listed as the Elise Moore bridal gown, donated by the Moore family in honor of memory, resilience, and daughters who stay. Daughters who stay. I sat at my workbench with a 19th century baptism record drying under weights and felt the room tilt. Mrs. Carter said she had 2 donor tickets and one had my name on it if I wanted to come. "She may expect you to react," she warned. I looked at the claim copy in my locked cabinet, the shelter notes, the photo of my mother wearing the dress on the courthouse steps, and the old letter where she wrote that the dress would be mine. "Then I will bring paper," I said. The night of the gala, I wore a plain black dress and low heels because I did not go there to compete with chandeliers. I carried a sealed claims folder in my purse and one archival sleeve containing my mother's note. The ballroom smelled like lilies, steak, expensive perfume, and polished wood. A string trio played near a sponsor wall covered in logos. Vanessa's face was everywhere: program booklet, donor board, slideshow, table cards. Lauren stood near the auction preview in a champagne satin gown, laughing with 2 boutique investors who had promised to back her new heritage bridal concept if the gala performed well. That was the part nobody had told me. The dress was not just charity, it was Lauren's launch story. My mother's gown had been turned into branding. I saw the dress before they saw me. It stood behind a velvet rope in a clear display case, the lace sleeves arranged as if my mother had just stepped out of it. For a moment, I forgot to breathe. Time does that around grief. It folds. I was 8 with a flashlight. I was 14 at a funeral. I was 16 on a porch with trash bags. I was 34 in a ballroom watching strangers admire the last piece of my mother Vanessa had not managed to rename yet. Then I saw the storage tag tucked inside the open garment bag on the platform behind the case. Cream paper, metal pin, faded blue ink. Keep for Natalie. Claim F1472. My mother's handwriting above Vanessa's fraud. The room sharpened. That was when the stolen memory became evidence. Lauren noticed me first. Her smile did not vanish. It tightened. "Natalie," she said, stretching my name like it was an unpleasant ribbon. I did not know you were coming. I was invited. By who? Someone who remembers me. Her eyes flicked to my purse. Vanessa appeared beside her within seconds, as if cruelty had its own alarm system. She wore emerald silk, diamonds at her throat, and the expression she used when strangers might be watching. "This is not a good night for old wounds," she said. I looked at the dress. "You made it an auction item." Her smile thinned. "Your mother believed in generosity. My mother believed in asking." Lauren stepped closer. "Please do not embarrass yourself." I looked at her bitter paddle. "You brought the prop for that already." Vanessa signaled security before I even touched the rope. A tall man with an earpiece approached and asked if there was a problem. Vanessa said, "This is an estranged relative who has struggled with instability. She was not invited." The Gala coordinator, a tired woman named Priya Shah, came over with a tablet. I gave her my name. She checked the donor list, then looked at Vanessa. "Ms. Moore is an invited guest of Helen Carter." The security guard stepped back. The first lie died quietly, but it still died in public. Vanessa's nostrils flared. "Fine," she said, "then behave like a guest." I said, "Guests do not usually find their names on forged claims." Priya looked up. Vanessa looked at my purse again. For the first time, she understood I had not come empty-handed. My father found me near the side aisle 10 minutes later. He looked older than I expected, softer at the edges, but his eyes still had that practiced exhaustion of a man who wanted pity for damage he had allowed. "Natalie," he said, "not tonight." I almost laughed because 18 years had passed, and he was still trying to schedule the truth for a day that never arrived. "Did you know she still had it?" I asked. His gaze moved to the dress, then away. "I knew there were items in storage." "Did you know my name was used on a loss claim?" His mouth opened, then closed. "Vanessa handled all that." There it was, his whole life as a sentence. Vanessa handled it. He benefited from not knowing too carefully. I said, "You saw me on that porch with trash bags." His face tightened. "You left angry." "I left locked out." He whispered, "Do not make this ugly." I touched the folder in my purse. It was ugly before I arrived. The auction began after dessert. Waiters cleared plates. Donors lifted coffee cups. The string trio stopped, and the auctioneer stepped onto the small stage under warm lights. Vanessa took the microphone first because she never missed a chance to turn theft into tribute. Lauren sat beneath her, smiling up like a daughter in a campaign ad. My father folded his program so hard the paper creased down the center. Mrs. Carter sat 3 tables behind me, silver hair pinned back, hands folded over her purse. Priya stood near the sponsor wall. The security guard remained by the door. The room looked ready to believe whatever story came with enough pearls and a charity logo. Vanessa spoke about legacy, motherhood, resilience, and the sacred duty of preserving memory. Each word landed like a dirty glove on my mother's dress. She called Elise her dear predecessor, a phrase that made my stomach turn. Then she introduced Lauren as the daughter who stayed to help this family heal. People clapped. Lauren lowered her eyes modestly. My father stared at the table. Vanessa continued, "Some memories are too precious to be kept by people who abandoned them. Tonight, we release this gown from a past of pain and turn it into hope for other families." A few women touched their necklaces. Then she looked directly at me. "A runaway daughter does not deserve to keep memories she threw away." That was the moment the room became useful. I stood before the applause could settle. Chairs shifted. Vanessa froze with one hand still on the microphone. The auctioneer blinked. I walked toward the stage, Not fast, not dramatic, just steady enough that security looked at Priya before moving. Priya did not signal him. Mrs. Carter stood too. That mattered more than she knew. I stopped beside the display case and said, "Before anyone bids, the donor history needs correcting." Vanessa laughed lightly. Natalie has always needed attention at family events. I looked at the auctioneer. Is provenance important when auctioning donated items? He hesitated, then said, "Yes, of course." I lifted the garment bag flap carefully and unpinned the cream storage tag without touching the dress. My hands knew fragile material. Vanessa's face drained of color. I read it into the microphone the auctioneer had not meant to give me. Keep for Natalie. Claim F1472. The room changed shape. A man at the sponsor table lowered his paddle. Someone stopped stirring coffee. Vanessa said, "That tag is old. It means nothing." I opened my folder. "It means your insurance claim number." I held up the photocopied affidavit. Filed when I was 16, listing this dress as destroyed in a basement flood, signed with my name. Lauren stood halfway. "You are being disgusting." I turned the page so the front tables could see the date. March 18th. I was not living in that house. Vanessa said, "Because you ran away." Mrs. Carter's voice came from behind me, clear and old and tired of waiting. "She came to my porch with 3 trash bags because you locked her out." Heads turned. Vanessa's smile snapped. "Helen, you do not know what happened inside our home." Mrs. Carter opened her purse and took out copies of the shelter intake record. I was the adult who called the counselor the next morning. She walked them to Priya, not to me. A good witness does not rescue the truth. She places it where denial cannot reach. Priya read the top page. Her expression changed from professional concern to something harder. "This says minor without stable housing." Vanessa said, "Those forms were exaggerated. Natalie was rebellious." I pulled out my school counselor's note. Same week, same address, same trash bags, same father who told me to stay somewhere else. My father stood then, slow and pale. "Natalie, stop." I looked at him. "Say it was false." He swallowed. "This is not the place." "Say I had a room that night." He did not answer. The silence did more work than my anger ever could. Lauren sat back down. Her paddle slipped from her hand and hit the carpet without a sound anyone should have heard, but everyone did. The auctioneer stepped away from the podium. Donors began whispering. Vanessa tried to recover. "This dress was preserved by me. I saved it when Natalie wanted nothing to do with this family." I held up my mother's note in its archival sleeve. My mother wrote that this dress was mine if I ever wanted a piece of her in the room. I let the words sit. The lace behind glass suddenly looked less like a donation and more like a witness. Vanessa said, "Elise would have wanted peace." "No," I said. "You wanted silence." The sentence landed clean. My father closed his eyes. Then Priya asked the question that cracked the event open. "Mrs. Moore, did the charity verify ownership before accepting this item?" Vanessa's chin lifted. "It came from our family storage." "Did Natalie Moore sign a donation release?" Priya asked. Vanessa looked at the auctioneer, then at Lauren. "The family understood." I said, "Family understanding is not my signature." Priya turned to the auctioneer. "Pause the lot." A board member near the sponsor table stood and asked for the affidavit copy. Another donor asked whether the insurance carrier had been notified that an item claimed as destroyed was being sold publicly. Vanessa gripped the podium. Lauren whispered, "Mom, fix this." But the thing about live microphones is that panic travels. Everyone heard her. Vanessa made one last mistake. She pointed at me and said, "She has hated me since I married her father. She would ruin her own mother's charity moment just to punish me." I looked at the dress, then at the crowd. "My mother is not your charity moment." The room went still. Not shocked, corrected. I handed the storage tag to Priya in an archival sleeve from my purse. "Please do not let anyone remove that from the building without documenting it." Priya nodded. Her voice changed when she addressed the room. "This auction item is withdrawn pending ownership and claim review." There was no applause. There was something better. A room full of people deciding not to clap for Vanessa anymore. Afterward, the ballroom fractured into small, frightened conversations. Donors who had hugged Vanessa an hour earlier avoided her table. The sponsor from Lauren's boutique launch stepped into the hallway with his phone pressed to his ear. The auctioneer removed the lot number from the podium. A staff member turned off the display light over the dress. That darkness felt kinder than the spotlight. Lauren rushed at me near the stage, face flushed. "Do you know what you just cost me?" I looked at the dress case. "No, I know what you tried to sell." She said, "This was supposed to help my business. It was my mother's dress. You left." I was thrown away. She had no answer for that. Golden children rarely practice for facts. My father followed me into the lobby, where the carpet changed from ballroom red to hotel beige. He looked smaller without the crowd. "I should have handled things differently," he said. I waited for the rest. But Vanessa was trying to build something meaningful. I laughed once, not because it was funny, because my body could not hold the insult quietly. She filed a claim in my name, hid my mother's dress, called me a runaway, and tried to auction it to fund Lauren's boutique story. He rubbed his forehead. "I did not know about the signature." "You knew I did not run away." His face collapsed just enough to show the truth had hit bone. I was overwhelmed. There it was, the enabler's favorite blanket. I said, "So was I. I was 16. He looked toward the ballroom doors as if Vanessa might still give him a line. I left before he found one. The next 72 hours were not fireworks. They were better. They were process. Priya called me the next morning from the charity office and asked for copies of the documents. She had already informed the board that the auction item had been withdrawn due to unresolved ownership, possible claim fraud, and misrepresentation in the donor program. 2 sponsors paused their pledged contributions until review. Lauren's boutique investors requested clarification about whether the heritage bridal concept had been built around an item she did not own. Vanessa posted a statement about being attacked by a troubled stepdaughter at a charity event. Bethany Lewis, a donor who had recorded the gala for social media, posted the clip of Vanessa's runaway line, Mrs. Carter's response, and Priya withdrawing the lot. Vanessa deleted her statement within 40 minutes. Deletion is a broom for people who forget about screenshots. 2 days after the gala, Priya asked me to attend an emergency board review at the charity office downtown. I almost said no, because walking into another room built around Vanessa's reputation felt like volunteering to be measured again. Then Mrs. Carter sent me one line. "Public lies need public correction." So I went. The office was on the 4th floor above a law firm, with framed donor photos on the walls and a glass table that made every paper look more official than it was. Vanessa arrived in a cream suit, Lauren behind her with red eyes and no tears. My father came last, carrying the same leather folder he used at church budget meetings, as if respectability were something you could hold under your arm. Vanessa told the board chair that I had created a scene because I was jealous of Lauren's success. "Natalie has always struggled when other women are celebrated," she said. Nobody looked at me yet. They looked at the folder in my hands. That was progress. I placed the insurance affidavit on the table, then the storage invoice I had obtained from the facility after giving the claim number and my mother's full name. The invoice showed the gown had been moved into paid storage 9 days after Vanessa claimed it was destroyed. A board member with silver glasses leaned forward. So the item was insured as lost while still being stored? Vanessa said, I was grieving. The paperwork was confusing. I slid over the next page. The storage account was renewed for 11 years. Lauren whispered, This is insane. I said, No, it is dated. The board chair asked Vanessa if she had disclosed the prior insurance claim when offering the dress as a donation. Vanessa stared at my father. He stared at his hands. The charity room did not need shouting. It had minutes being taken. Then Vanessa tried the line she had used on everyone for half my life. Natalie left this family. She forfeited any moral claim. Mrs. Carter, who had come as the original donor guest, opened her purse and placed a small photograph on the table. It was from the morning after I slept on her couch at 16. I was sitting at her kitchen table in a borrowed sweatshirt, hair wet from rain, 3 trash bags behind the chair. This is the runaway, she said. That child asked whether she was allowed to shower before school. No one spoke. Even Lauren looked down. My father's breathing changed. A board member asked him directly, Mr. Moore, was your daughter allowed back into the home after that night? He rubbed his thumb over the folder seam until the leather creaked. Not immediately, he said. Because? The board member asked. Vanessa cut in. Because she was unsafe. I took out the school counselor email. Unsafe to whom? The report says I was afraid to go home because Vanessa had packed my belongings and my father would not intervene. The board chair closed her pen. That sound ended Vanessa's version. When I left that office, the board had suspended her Gala authority, frozen all funds connected to the dress lot, and requested a full review of prior donated items tied to her committee. In the hallway, Lauren hissed, You ruined everything. I said, No, I labeled it. An insurance investigator called 5 days later. I gave him the claim number, the affidavit copy, and the fact that I had been a minor in shelter placement when my alleged signature appeared. He did not promise drama. He promised review. That was enough. The charity board voted to delay Vanessa's re-election pending inquiry. 2 members resigned from her committee. The local sponsor wall photos disappeared from Lauren's boutique page. Lauren sent me one message. You could have talked to us privately. I replied, You auctioned it publicly. She did not write back. My father called 6 times, then sent a photo of my mother holding me as a baby, like nostalgia could testify for him. I saved it, not because it helped him, but because my mother was in it. Then I blocked his number for 30 days. Boundaries are easier when the evidence is still warm. The dress stayed in secure temporary storage through the charity's attorney until ownership was resolved. Because my mother had written the note, because Vanessa could not produce a valid donation release, and because the insurance issue made everyone suddenly respectful of paperwork, the gown was released to me 6 weeks later. I picked it up from a conservation storage facility on a rainy Wednesday morning. No music, no family, no ballroom. Just me, a textile crate, a receipt, and a woman at the desk who asked if I wanted help carrying it to the car. I said no. Not because it was not heavy, because I needed to feel the weight. Some things should be carried by the person they were meant for. At home, I opened the crate in my studio, wearing cotton gloves under white task lights. The dress had yellowing at the sleeves, stress at the waist seam, and a small tear near the hem where someone had handled it carelessly. I documented everything. Then I found one more thing Vanessa had missed. Tucked deep inside the inner seam was a tiny blue thread, not part of the dress, knotted around a loose stitch. My mother used to do that on garments she made for people she loved. A blue thread for protection, she once told me, because superstition is just love trying to become useful. I sat down on the studio floor and cried for the first time since the gala. Not for Vanessa, not for Lauren, not even for my father. I cried because my mother had left a small piece of care where nobody thought to steal it. I did not wear the dress. I did not donate it. I did not hide it in a closet where fear could turn it into another locked room. I restored it slowly, the way my mother taught me to respect fabric. Clean hands, low light, no rushing. I placed the cream storage tag in a protective sleeve beside the claim copy and my mother's note. The tag was no longer only proof of theft. It was proof that my mother had named me before Vanessa renamed everything else. Keep for Natalie. 3 words had survived 18 years of lies. I used the money I would have spent fighting my family longer to start a small program through my preservation studio and 2 local shelters. We call it the Memory Protection Box. It is simple. Waterproof folders, scan drives, document sleeves, labels, a checklist for birth certificates, custody papers, photos, letters, medical cards, school records, and the small objects people think they can grab later but often cannot. Women come in with grocery bags, pillowcases, glove boxes full of damp paper, photos curled from heat, letters they hide from partners or parents or adult children who think memory is negotiable. We scan what we can. We label what matters. We make copies. We teach them how to keep proof away from people who call control concern. The first box I packed had a child's drawing, a restraining order, 3 Polaroids, and a recipe card. The woman cried when I sealed it. I understood. Sometimes safety looks like a labeled folder. Vanessa lost her board position before winter. Officially, she stepped back to focus on family healing. Unofficially, donors do not like being invited to applaud a lie with a tax receipt attached. Lauren's boutique launch was postponed, then quietly rebranded without the word heritage. My father sent a letter through Mrs. Carter because he knew I would not open one from him directly. In it, he wrote that he should have come to the porch that night. Not could have, should have. That was the closest he had ever come to truth. I have not answered yet. Maybe I will one day. Maybe I will not. Accountability is not a doorbell someone rings when consequences get lonely. The wedding dress is now displayed in my studio only once a year. Not for sale, not under auction lights, not beside Vanessa's name. It sits behind conservation glass with 3 items beside it: my mother's photograph, her handwritten note, and the storage tag. No claim affidavit, no shelter record. Those are locked away. I do not make my trauma perform every time someone wants to admire lace. When visitors ask about the tag, I say, it helped the dress find its way home. That is enough for strangers. I know the rest. Sometimes I still hear Vanessa's voice in that ballroom. A runaway daughter does not deserve memories. I think about the 16-year-old girl on Mrs. Carter's porch, with trash bags cutting red marks into her fingers. I think about my father folding a dish towel while someone else threw away his child. I think about Lauren laughing near the dress, not because she hated my mother, but because she had been taught that anything connected to me was available if she wanted it. Then I look at my studio shelves, the preservation boxes, the scanned photographs, the careful labels, the dress resting safely in filtered light, and I remember the truth. I did not run away from my mother's memory. I ran toward the first door that opened. So tell me, if someone stole the last thing your mother promised you and used it to call you unworthy in public, would you stay quiet for the family image? Or would you hold up the tag and let the room read the truth? And if the people who erased you asked for peace only after the proof survived them, would you give the memory back? Or finally keep what was always yours?